Welcome to the PUTTcast podcast by Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency. Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency is the only registered 501c3 nonprofit wholly dedicated to exposing the hard truths about pharmacy benefit managers and how their greed-centered, profit-at-any-cost business practices are driving up drug prices and healthcare premiums while reducing consumer choice and endangering patient access. To learn more, visit our website at truthrx.org.
Welcome to this episode of the PUTTcast, the podcast brought to you by Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency. I am your co-host, Lauren Young, Vice President of PUTT's board, and I have one of my favorite co-hosts with me, Monique Whitney, the Executive Director of PUTT. Welcome back to the podcast, Monique.
I'm so happy to be here. I love being on the PUTTcast whenever I get a chance to. So thanks for having me on today, especially with our guests.
That's right. Very girl power centric episode. I know anyone that's been involved in pharmacy advocacy knows the names of our guests today, but we are so ecstatic to have both of you ladies on with us. We're going to start with Rosemary Smith. She is from the great Commonwealth of Kentucky. And if anyone has heard of the Kentucky Independent Pharmacists Alliance, Rosemary is one of the co-founders with her husband, who is also a pharmacist. So that is, again, some extraordinary superpowers. You have Rosemary to not only fight PBMs, but also have a husband who is working day and night in the same industry. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. I'm excited to be here. Love this group and glad that you've asked me to be here. Thank you.
Happy to have you. And from the great state of Georgia, we have Nikki Bryant. Welcome, Nikki. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you, Lauren?
I'm great. I know that we have spent a lot of time talking in previous episodes about some of the wins that y'all states have gotten over the past few years, and all the pharmacists across the country that look to success to keep us going, because it's really hard when you're day in, day out in the trenches, fighting against low reimbursements, fighting to make sure your patients are really getting the best medication at the best time for them. You know, there's a lot of different obstacles that get thrown at us, but both of you ladies have been instrumental in help in your states. Rosemary, I'm going to start with you because Kentucky's had a couple different successes over the years. I know that you are no stranger to talking to your legislators on the state level.
Not at all. Back in 2011, Luther and I were in the same pharmacy class at UK, University of Kentucky. We've been in pharmacy a long time, independent pharmacy. And in 2011, we saw managed care coming into Medicaid. And we decided, or I really decided, to send a letter out to all the 500 independents in the state. And really, you know, back then we're all independents and we're entrepreneurs, as Nikki knows. And we were friends across the state, but we were competitors in a certain way. But we sent out a letter and said, we need to organize. We need to have a voice. And we were starting KIPA, Kentucky Independent Pharmacists Alliance. And at the first meeting, we had over 125 pharmacists. We couldn't believe it when people were walking in, people that we had heard about, you know, and it was pretty amazing. So after that, we had a voice and we started working. It's a long process. So our first big bill was in 2020 with Senate Bill 50 that totally reformed Medicaid in our state. We went to a single state PBM. It saved a lot of money. It's been estimated over $280 million per year in our state just for Medicaid. So we were one of the first three states to do that. But what we did is we started grassroots. We started at the very beginning. I assigned every legislator to somebody in their district. And I said, this is your responsibility. You need to let them know what's going on. What is a PBM? I mean, our legislators didn't know what a PSAO or a PBM so it was just education at the beginning. And from the beginning, Senator Max Wise from Campbellsville, and he's phenomenal. He really understands the issue. He's former FBI. He really has no background in pharmacy, but now he is in the Senate now. So he's really moved up in Kentucky, but his first love is independent pharmacy. So we worked, and then we passed Senate Bill 188 in 2024. And this was PBM reform in the commercial market, which we're one of the first again to tackle that. That has not moved as smoothly in the enforcement because the Senate Bill 50 with Medicaid, the governor was on our side as well, and his staff worked well with us. But Senate Bill 188, which is the PBM reform commercially, has been difficult. We're still fighting, but we have just found in Kentucky that having personal contact with every legislator, they have to come into your pharmacy, they know you, and the turnover when we have new people elected, then we kind of have to start over, with some new people. But it's worked well, and that's worked well for us here in Kentucky.
So
no doubt, Rosemary. I mean, everybody, in KIPA is so great, so like ready at hand, and I think you all together have done an incredible job. I didn't know that was how KIPA got started. I'm just sitting here like, I don't know how I didn't know that, but I do know, for us from the beginning, and your Senator Max Wise, every state should be so lucky. I mean, truly, he's just been marvelous, that his grasp. And then you said he's former FBI. I'm like, well, of course, like this is going to be right up his alley, right? Like there's profiteering going on, fraud, waste, abuse. I mean, that's no wonder he took to it so quickly. That's a great story.
No loss of bad guys for Max Wives to go after on the PBM landscape for sure. And like you said, he doesn't have a healthcare background, so your pharmacy champion can come from the most unlikely places. So that's wonderful. So Nikki, I know in Georgia, I have watched just about every legislative hearing there possibly is. And so especially when it comes to PBM reform. And there is no one, I think, that Greg Reibold trusts more whenever they're going against PBMs, because you come in as the mayor of South Georgia with all of your treats, and you just are so sweet to those legislators, and you turn to the PBM lobbyists and say, just bless your heart. And you know that means kindly get out of the way. Nikki is going to make you pay.
Yeah, I think it is a Southern thing. Like whenever we were there in Atlanta this past time, like I just brought some cookies with me, and I asked Greg, I was like, is this against the rules? And he's like, it's debatable, Nikki, it's debatable, but I just do whatever I have to do, and it's hospitality, and just showing that we appreciate them, and so I get in trouble sometimes. But it's really from my heart, and I'm very sincere about it, and everybody smiles and they're happy to see me, and then we start talking about what they need to do to change pharmacy. So it really opens the door, and we're really lucky to have a lot of support in Atlanta for us. I think that's very evident. We can go in like a wrecking ball, and they're just glad we're there, and we have a lot of support.
Last year, you guys had the bill passed, but it didn't get the governor's approval, so you guys had to get to work and get all of your pharmacy owners across Georgia to come together again and try to get that support. And, that was incredible to see, because sometimes pharmacy owners think that if legislators are unable to get it passed this session, that means a no forever.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of frustration when Governor Kemp vetoed the bill. A lot of pharmacists were extremely angry. And it's difficult when you're on the outside of the legislative process, and you don't understand what the workings of all of it is, and you just see something like that happen. And it's easy for pharmacists, especially pharmacists who are so desperate to keep their stores open. I mean, hunger and desperation does not bring out the best in people. And like in my community, I know I have 2 pharmacies in Pharmacy Deserts, and I mean, there are 6 independent pharmacies serving 8 counties. 2 don't have pharmacies. So pharmacists are, just I think they're just uneasy. And when something like that happens, it's just hard to reel them in and to keep them going and saying, we're going to do better next year. And it's hard to move forward when there's so much that seems to be fighting against you. So we rallied, and we're triumphant this year, and we brought a better bill. So it changes reimbursement for state health benefit and university system in Georgia to a NADAC model. So we're excited about that. I'm just hanging on, selling more cakes and cookies, just trying to make it to January. It's really hard sometimes for us to keep encouraging pharmacists who are so scared of, they carry, I'm carrying 15,000 people between my two stores, and that amount of pressure is just unbearable at times. And the thought of your stores closing and those people being without it's just really overwhelming.
And Nikki, I think you make such a poignant appeal there, because, when I think about states that have been innovative in laws, it's Georgia. And Greg has been behind so many of those. I mean, I remember the CVS Aetna, I always tell people the story, the CVS Aetna merger, how all across the country, we were over here at PUTT being like, just say no, just say no. Here comes Georgia. And they're like, we're going to extract some concessions from you. We're going to sign off. I was like, that is such a clever idea. Like, why didn't the rest of us think of that? And yet, even in a state with incredibly innovative laws, and I think this is true of Kentucky, also a state that's been really forward thinking, it's still really hard. It's still really scary. There's still pharmacy deserts. There's still closures. And it's such a unique pressure, because as a pharmacy owner, you've got the business that you've got to care for. When you have a business, that's your baby. But then your business uniquely also cares for people. So you've got that additional pressure. So it's, I can see how, the anger would be there. You can only be told like next year so many times.
It's just, if you don't have those relationships in place where they can trust you and know that you're doing the right thing for everybody, it's very difficult.
Absolutely. And that's really the network that both of you guys have cultivated in your own states. You guys are very trusted resources for other owners. They can come to you when there is a question, whether there's a new bill that's just been passed and there's questions about how that's going to look in January, whenever that comes about in Georgia. I know the same in Illinois. There's a core group of owners that talk a lot about the pharmacy industry and then other things going on in the state, because as owners, we also have to look at other bits of the business landscape in the state. And so that's kind of what we have found as well. You want to make sure that your lawmakers that are on your side, you're also watching their other issues, so that you can say, like, one of our pharmacy champions in Illinois, one of his biggest passion projects was education, because he comes from a family of teachers. So whenever there was issues with teachers not being able to get medication at local pharmacies, that became a pain point for him. And so if you can make sure what other issues your legislators are focused on, you can figure out how to bring the pharmacy topic to them in a way that they will understand and care about. Right. And that's kind of what you guys have to help them do and read between the lines, because not everyone is going to take this on and make it their number one priority, but they can still be supportive whenever the time comes for whipping votes or even voting on the floor and turning, some of those maybes or no's into yeses. And that's really the relationship part of it.
It's very interesting in Georgia. And, Greg and I have been working together legislatively for like 7 or 8 years now. And, I'm kind of a loose cannon in a way, and he has to reel me in and keep me grounded, because I'm so passionate. I'm so passionate about my community, about my patients. And, I need some reeling in at times, but I'm just thankful that there's somebody there to do it. And it's really hard to focus that passion that you have for, it's really hard to focus it and keep it under control so that you don't do more damage than good. So
I've found here in Kentucky that kind of unlike Nikki, I'm the one everybody's, they're saying, oh, you don't need especially our lobbyists. No, you don't need to do a call to action. You don't need to do that. Yes, I do, and I don't listen. I have a thing in my head that I know what works. And, they have their own agenda, because they have to work on all these other issues, not just pharmacy. But pharmacy is my issue. And so I wait. And they talked me in this Senate Bill 188 until literally 2 weeks ago. I was talked down every week. Don't do this, don't do that. But I finally got our group mobilized, and we contacted the governor, the attorney general, and the Department of Insurance commissioner. And but I say, be nice, be constructive. But some of them, like you say, Nikki, some of them, they're angry. They're just this week, last week, no, just really Friday, we get our Medicaid once a week. I don't know, Nikki, if you're the same way, but Medicaid always comes on Monday. And for some reason, something told me Friday to check the portal for MedImpact. And I usually do it on Saturday. And I looked, and our 6 pharmacies, I went, what? That's not right. It was like 25% of what we should be getting. So I get on the phone to the Medicaid pharmacy director, Dr. Ali, and she's like, that can't be happening. I said, it's happening. So I started then calling my members, and they all looked, and they panicked. People, I had calls of people crying. They weren't going to be able to make payroll this week. They weren't going to pay their drug bill because the PBMs, MedImpact, was not going to pay us. But by having the connections that we've had, and they trust us. And so by that afternoon, some of the MCOs hadn't paid MedImpact. We have 6 MCOs, and they just didn't pay MedImpact. So they couldn't forward the money to us. Well, as I said, didn't they know that on Thursday? Why didn't they call Medicaid department and say, wait a minute, you get your MCOs to pay the money that they know these pharmacists? And so by the afternoon, then this morning, we got our first payments, and then we're going to get the rest of it tomorrow. So people will be able to make their payroll. But people are angry. They're upset, and, rightfully so. And I am too. And so I didn't listen, and I don't listen usually to most people.
That's impressive, Rosemary. That's advocacy in action. The fact that you were able to get something you found on Friday, and by Monday you were able to get that resolved in a way that your owners can have payroll covered. That's amazing. All because these billion-dollar companies decided not to pay you guys on time. That's the crazy part.
Yeah. Crazy.
Is there any punishment for them not paying on time?
No, evidently not. We do have a call with them tomorrow. I'm on that call, and it won't be a very polite one, for me anyway.
Yeah.
Dr. Ali agreed with me. She said, they should have told us. I said, yes, they should have told you. But no, I don't think there's any penalty. Think about how much our money is staying with these big companies. What are they making on this money, of having our money? As I said, the money that we were supposed to get, we've already filled those prescriptions the last month. We've already paid our drug bill. We paid our employees. We have to have our money. And it's not, some of it's, of course, Medicaid to us is our best payer, because we since 2020.
Same in Georgia. Because of the legislative work that we've done. It is the best player because we've established those rules with managed care several years ago, where it's standardized, and it is what it is. It doesn't just the same as the bill that applies to the state health and university plans. That was already established with Medicaid. So it's, you are where you are, and I don't want to remind people of pharmacists, but you're open now because of the work that we've already done. So don't forget where we were and where we are now and how we got there.
Lauren, I'm sorry I keep jumping on you. Please feel welcome to tell me to shut up. I'm just so excited to be here. When I first joined PUTT, one of our longer standing board members used to talk about NARD, the National Association of Retail Druggists. It was the trade association before it became NCPA. And he always talks about how the pharmacists were formidable. legislators would stop and they would listen because they knew pharmacists had power and they had influence. And that's never really stopped. It's just that somehow, somewhere along the way, pharmacists just got confused with being really nice people who will just be really quiet and accept what's given to them. And that's just not the case. You have to really stand up for yourself, because when you do, you're standing up for, as you said, the 15,000 people between you and that other pharmacy that you're caring for, and you can't be quiet when that kind of, when that's on the line.
Absolutely.
Right.
And we saw that in full force last year when the Pharmacists Fight Back Act was released federally. And I know both of you were instrumental in helping that get a lot of push forward, and there is more to come on Pharmacists Fight Back Act. Congressman Auchincloss has stepped up again to be a very big supporter of this. It wasn't able to get passed last year, but there was a lot of things in contention with that since the November election happened. And so trying to get anything passed during the last 90 days of the year last year was a big lift. But the fact that people really did see pharmacists fight back as a bill that was important and really had conversations going on the federal level. It even got people motivated to get more involved on the state level because they know Congress can move at a little slower than a glacial pace. But this really was motivation for people to get up and fight back. And so I know that, Rosemary, you had, again, letter writing campaign that reached out to so many of the different legislators. I know that you were able to talk to some very key people on the federal landscape and get them involved. Just amazing to have James Comer be a supporter of this bill. That was very, very impressive. And thank you for that.
Well, we're working on that again for this one. I have an idea that I just wanted to kind of throw out there to you all. I think we need to have a Nikki for Georgia, a Rosemary for Kentucky, a Lauren, Illinois, right? I think we need to have this is kind of what I did in Kentucky. I think we need to have one person in all 50 states that will be on a group together that will work on the same messages. We'll do the same letter writing campaign. We'll take the same pictures in our pharmacies, save our local pharmacies, that we have one message, and it is forceful. I think we could do that. Does anybody else agree that we could do that? I think we could.
I love that idea. I so love that idea. What do you think, Nikki? Can we get another one of you? Are there more Nikki?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, seriously, we need that. And I love that you suggest that, because I think that was the secret of our success. Now, it's not hard. It's a lot of fun. It's really rewarding, but it takes a certain something. Like, you get really invested in it, body and soul. And I think that's kind of the secret from what I gather, Rosemary, years of watching your success. And Nikki just is that. She's just passion, like embodied. My experience of you, Nikki, is that you just, like, wherever you go, because you were speaking at the press conference for Pharmacists Fight Back. And you were just up there just sharing from your heart, talking about how you make more, selling pastries than you do selling medicine. But it speaks to, like, it creates such a real image of what you're dealing with, though, that here's a pharmacy. People rely on this medication, in some cases, to sustain their lives. And you are a medical professional, trained, and, to make money, it requires having a bakery, or requires, in other pharmacies' cases, having a sundry shop or something like that. But I love this idea. And, and so for anyone who's listening, please contact us. You do not have to be a PUTT member. You just have to be somebody who loves independent pharmacy and is willing to, call people together. And if you're creative, great. If you're not creative, no problem. We've got an abundance of creativity. I'm sure we can source. But please, get involved. I love the idea of, a Rosemary, a Nikki, a Lauren, in every one of our states.
Rosemary, do you have any advice on how a pharmacy owner can get involved with a legislator that may not be as educated about PBMs yet?
What we did here in Kentucky is that we took every county and every legislator, and I made lists of every independent pharmacy that was in their area. And I contacted each one. And they knew them personally. So I said, I'm going to put one person in charge, but all of you are on this committee for this representative or senator. And I mean, it took work, but I guess Kentucky's a little bit different, because, it's a smaller state, but we do have 120 counties, but we were able to just form these relationships. And they knew us. They represent us. Number one, they represent us. They represent our patients. So that's what we did. We sent letters. We we didn't bake anything because I couldn't bake anything if I had to, but I can send letters. A lot of things we did. I love that we took the pictures. We had pharmacies, and all of our employees dressed up, and they made signs. And they took pictures, save our independent pharmacies. And we sent them to every Kentucky legislator. So there's just personal things that we did, but we got to know people. And they know that we're telling the truth. That's the key. We're telling the truth. But most of them at the beginning said, this can't be right. Just like Nikki said, how did we get in this position? How have we let pharmacy benefit managers put our profession in this? Talk about angry. Just think about it. How have we allowed that to happen? But we have to change it. So we have to tell our story. We have to tell stories like Nikki does. We have to tell stories like we've had 98 independents close in Kentucky. And right over here in my office, I have a big board, and I have the state of Kentucky, and I have each one of them marked and I take that everywhere. I take it with me. I've got 2 more that I'm going to have to add. So, but it really, people can organize this. It's really easy. It's not bad. I can help organize all this.
That's right.
So we can get involved, and it's going to take that, I think, federally to get this done. I really do.
I know people are intimidated whenever they're speaking to or reaching out to their legislators on the federal level, which seems so crazy, because once you are able to sit down and talk to them, a lot of them do really want what's best for our patients. They don't understand how this has come about, because it seems so awful that patients can be steered towards another pharmacy, or pharmacies are not able to not even just recoup the dispensing fee or get a dispensing fee, but just recoup the actual cost of the drug. That just seems so foreign to a lot of these legislators, because they've never seen the reimbursement, EOBs, or, seen that red bank account, whenever that happens. And so that's really the important part. And so I think the fact that, Rosemary, you have helped and been that bridge for so many of your owners to say, if you're nervous about calling, Congressman Guthrie, I'll do it. I got it. He has to hear this, and I'm going to make sure he does, because you're speaking for all of those pharmacy owners in the 120 counties of Kentucky. And so that's so impressive.
We're going to have to all work, not just on our legislators. We're going to have to go across the board, I think.
That's right. And you can listen to the PUTT Summit. You can join us for that on September 24th. We will have a lot of our friends from across the country speaking. Nikki's favorite, Greg Reibold, will obviously be there speaking. And we have Congressman Auchincloss. So we can pick his brain a little bit about what Pharmacists Fight Back Act Part 2 looks like, and what it is going forward, and really what PBM reform, the appetite for this new Congress is, because there has been some changeover. There's been some announcements of different people not seeking their next term. There's a lot of moving pieces going forward.
I'm glad you brought up the summit. As we've been talking about Greg, I was just thinking about all of the people out there who may or may not know who we're talking about. We all know Greg Reibold. He has been extremely instrumental at the federal level and also at the state level. He lives in Georgia, and Nikki knows him real well from work that's been done in Georgia. He will be speaking at the summit. We are going to be talking about the law that got passed in Arkansas this year, banning PBM pharmacy ownership. It was challenged in court, but this is Arkansas, and they brought us the ERISA preemption doesn't preempt everything back in 2018. So I think it's going to be good. So I'm glad you brought that up, Lauren. Anyone who's interested in the summit, if you go to our website, truthrx.org, and you click on the events tab, you'll see information there about the summit. So I encourage everyone to check that out. It will be huge this year.
And so, Nikki, you mentioned that you had not been very big in advocacy up until, a few years ago. But now when someone is looking for an example of how they can get involved, they can watch the Pharmacists Fight Back Act press conference, and they can see that you really did have the floor and you did show a bunch of pharmacy owners across the country that this is important.
Yeah, I think it's really important. With legislators, there's so many different issues. And my cousin was a senator in Georgia. He passed away several years ago, but he told me, he said, we can't know everything, and we have to have a person to reach out to when there's an issue to get information about it and to know how to vote on it. And of course, I was his pharmacy person, but I like to be the pharmacy person. So when Congressman Bishop has questions about a pharmacy issue, his staff calls and they're like, Nikki, what do we need to do about this? What do you think about this? And so, I built that relationship with them. And I think it's important to reiterate what Rosemary said, that relationships are the most important part about advocacy. A relationship between that legislator with their staff, that is where it's at. And that's what you have to have, is a personal relationship. And they have to trust you. They have to trust that what you're saying is in the best interest of their constituents, and that you're going to advise them well on how they should vote or how they should act. And, this is a red state, and Congressman Bishop is Democratic. And, it doesn't matter to me. It does not matter to me, red or blue. If you help me, then I'm going to love you and I'm going to help you. So I'm just so nonpartisan at this point with PBM issues. It affects everybody. And I don't care what your political side is. If you're willing to advance pharmacy, then you're my friend. We talked about people, not being, being nervous or anxious about talking to their representatives and about speaking or standing out. And I'll tell you a funny story. When we were on the way to that press conference, I was so afraid that I was going to mispronounce Auchincloss, like terrified. And so nervous about it from the very beginning that I left my hearing aids in the room, and Greg had to make the taxi driver turn around to go back to the room to get them because I couldn't hear. And I was just a mess, such a mess. And so anyway, we went back, and the whole way there, I was practicing. And I'm like, what if I say it wrong? And he's like, just keep saying it. We'll keep practicing. And so, I think we're all, even though we appear to be strong and we appear to be fearless, none of us are. And we're all have anxieties or things about ourselves that we're self-conscious about, or, that make us anxious. And you just have to come the way you are and make it work and speak from your heart and know that your patients rely on you to be there.
That's incredible. Even Nikki gets nervous.
Yeah, I do. So
that's wonderful. Well, again, we are looking for more soldiers in this fight. If anyone is looking to get more involved, please reach out to us at truthrx.org. We have no shortage of ways that you can help out this fight. Again, Pharmacists Fight Back Act Part 2. There's going to be some more information about that. I think, Monique, we get messages about that multiple times a week, making sure that we are still interested in PBM reform, and that we are still, did we know that reimbursements are bad in pharmacy? Yes, yep. We're very, very aware. We've heard that once or twice today. And so really that's our goal, is to be that resource. And I really think that, Rosemary, you touched on this earlier, that education was so important in your legislators trying to make sure that they understood what a PBM was, the whole alphabet soup of different acronyms they have in healthcare. There's been some other single PBM reform bills in the works, and we have always guided them towards Kentucky and our friends in other states that have gotten that passed, because they see savings in Kentucky. That was not a fluke. They were able to really have that established. It's been happening year over year. Senator Max Wise was a champion of that for a reason. And he really loved the fact that he was able to come back to other legislators and say, I told you so. I knew there was money that these pharmacies weren't getting paid. Now let's get paid. So then there can be other funds for other projects. That's the part that people haven't quite figured out, that if they are able to pay for the pharmacies to continue being open, we are so much more than a drugstore for our patients. We are that touch point of community healthcare in so many of the different towns that we represent. Luckily, we have two wonderful examples of advocacy with us today, and you guys were able to share your stories and really help people feel that, one, they're not alone, because that's what we hear a lot, that once they get involved with PUTT, they kind of, like Nikki said, we found our people. We really did find people that we were looking for, that understand that if we all start rowing the same direction, our voices are going to get louder. The legislators are not going to be able to overlook this anymore. They can't just call this, as PBMs say, cherry picking examples or anything like that. This is real daily problems that every pharmacy owner across the country faces. That trickles down to patients, and those patients get vocal, and then they call their legislators, and then their legislators call us panicking because they didn't know this was a problem, or how can they fix this problem for Mr. Jones, Miss Smith. And that's where we have to step in. And so we are really trying to help educate the legislators, get our patients served, and just keep our doors open so that our staff and our community can be taken care of. That's really the goal. Ladies, thank you for spending so much time with us today. I'm sure that there are going to be owners out there that hear this and think, okay, I can do that. That's not as hard as I thought. I don't have to do this all by myself. I can connect with other owners. So thank you for sharing that message, and stay tuned for more updates from Pharmacists Fight Back Act and some more legislative wins, hopefully, for our friends across the country. I can't wait to see what y'all keep doing in Kentucky and Georgia. And, there are other places in the United States besides the South that are getting some legislative wins, but you guys do tend to really have a hold on getting PBM reform accomplished, and meaningful PBM reform. So keep it up, and we will continue watching and supporting you, cheering you on. So thank you very much for all of you today.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Thanks for having me.
And we will be back next month with more PUTTcast. But before then, you can join us for the PUTT Legislative Summit that is going to happen on September 24th. So if you haven't gone to truthrx.org and get your ticket today, we look forward to seeing you and continuing more advocacy in action very soon. Thanks. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the PUTTcast. If you don't know us, we are from Pharmacists United for Truth and Transparency, or PUTT, and you can join us at truthrx.org, and you can get a multitude of different resources. You can sign up for our newsletters. You can follow us on social media. You can really get a wealth of information from all of our outlets. You can also donate to our cause at truthrx.org/donate. We appreciate your time today, and hopefully you'll join us for the next episode of the podcast.
PBMs are robbing you day in and day out, making you work for below-cost reimbursements. Billion-dollar corporations hurting hard-working independent pharmacy owners as they line their pockets and put so many of you out of business. And now it's happening with so many pharmacy software vendors that have sold out to billion-dollar hedge funds. Are you truly happy with your pharmacy software vendor? Is support what it used to be, or you find yourself waiting on hold? Are your issues resolved in a timely fashion? When is the last time you took a look at the bill from your pharmacy software vendor? Perhaps it's time for a change. Visit our website at www.datascanpharmacy.com and give us a call at 1-877-222-7979.